In the early 70s, a group of students at C.W. Baker High School in Baldwinsville, New York, set out to build a radio station that would create a unique broadcasting experience, not only for them, but for a multitude of generations to come. Nearly a half-century later, it's time to hear firsthand from those who went behind the mic, telling the stories of how this station changed their lives, both in the studio and beyond, as we celebrate 50 years of broadcasting excellence on WBXL 90.5 FM. This is The Buzz Goes Gold.
Hello, this is Jordan Hayes with another episode of The Buzz Goes Gold. I'm here again with somebody who's close to my time at the station. Another representative from the early to mid-2000s. Please introduce yourself. And I know this is Susan Connors, who also went by Susan Pedrotti during your time in high school.
Yes.
Class of 2005.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, well, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. And it's always a pleasure when I get somebody from my class, or at least not necessarily my individual class, but the classes that were there when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're going to start with what I usually ask all my guests, which is, what made you interested in broadcasting? How did you find out about the radio station? And what was your reason for joining in the first place?
So I heard about WBXL through friends pretty early on in high school. Some friends of mine through my church youth group were on WBXL, and it sounded like they had a great time. So it was something I wanted to do pretty early on, but scheduling wise, didn't really have the opportunity until my senior year. So signed up, took the class, loved it. It was fun. It was great to just be a part of the organization, to be in a space where I got to talk and play my music and learn how a radio station works. It was incredible that our high school had that technology, and to learn how to use it was a lot of fun.
I know we were one of the, if not the only public school district that had their own radio station, at least in Syracuse, Central New York. So we were on after the Al Jenner years. Yes. What was it like with the class with our Al Jenner, a.k.a. Peter Hahn?
Yeah, Mr. Hahn. He was great. I remember the first thing I noticed was his voice. He had that quintessential radio voice. And he had a great sense of humor. I still remember we had to take it was a multiple choice quiz before we could actually be on air. And he threw in some just funny answers, like, if you hear the fire alarm go off, what should you do? And one of the responses I still remember to this day was play The Doors' Baby Light My Fire. You know, that was his sense of humor that made the class enjoyable. And it was nice to go there. Senior year, I was taking a lot of AP classes. So to go and it was a great way to decompress. And I think a lot of classmates felt the same way.
Yeah, speaking of the classmates, who else do you remember from not only just the class, but from the station in general?
I was really trying to remember specifically my class. I don't. My memory is failing me a little bit. I do remember at the time, though, Dan Marks, who was in my class, he was on the board. He was great. Trying to remember who else.
If you need some suggestions, I can maybe throw a couple of names. I know Jonathan Head was the GM at the, or at least, and then Candace Candace Smith, a.k.a. Candace Ward now.
Okay. Yes, I remember. Yep. In my class too, Clarissa Ham, I think she was on the radio.
Also in the band. I marched with her in the band.
Okay, yeah.
Didn't know she did the station also.
Yeah. There's I remember there's also a lot of people in the class who are sophomores, so I didn't really know too well.
Right.
But yeah, they were all great. They were really nice.
Yeah, I know my sophomore year, your senior year, I was in the ninth period. I was in the ninth period class, and I know you were not in it, so.
No, I was, yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember what period it was. It was earlier in the day, but yeah.
Okay, so you took the class, you get on air. Mm-hmm. What time were you on? Or was it during the day, or was it a night shift?
It was one of the night shows. It was, from like 6:30 to 8:30. I believe it was either on Tuesday or Thursday that I had my show. It was just me. I know a lot of people had partners on air, but it was a solo show. Just did my own thing. I like to look up, I would do like this day in history bit, do some trivia, just like goofy little things in between the songs, look up the history of the song or the artist and just talk about that.
Do you remember the machines that we used to use? I do.
I do, yes.
You would punch in a number. You would look it up in the book, you would punch in a number, and that's how you would find the song.
I completely forgot about that until now. Yeah, I remember that. I also remember having to get if you brought your own CDs, having to get them approved before.
Absolutely.
Yep, I remember that. And often bring my own pack of CDs to play to.
What would you, maybe an example or two?
I'm sorry, what was that?
If you could give an example or two or three.
Okay. I played, I would usually play just a lot of kind of upbeat songs from the 70s and 80s. I still really love that era of music. Let's see. I'd play some 38 Special, some Loverboy, Working for the Weekend. Stuff along those lines. I take requests. Occasionally get some callers. I did have some regular callers on my show who would request songs.
That was interesting.
Yeah. One of them is actually my now husband. He is also a Baker alumni. He graduated in 2004. But he would still, even though he was in Rochester in college, he would still call me and request songs on my show. And then Jan Golden would always call and request a song. So,
oh, yes. She and I became close when, during my time at Baker. We're still... Sorry to cut you off. We're still friends. We're still good friends to this day.
Yeah, she's wonderful. We are too. We still stay in touch. She always looked out for the students, especially I felt like the ones who came in at night to do their shows, and just always wonderful to talk to. She's so upbeat, just a great human being. So that's how I got to know her too, was through the radio station.
She was the number one listener, at least when I was on.
Yes.
And so, anyway, this was after you graduated. I wanted to give you a little bit of some insider information on what happened the year after you left Baker. So we took those instant replay machines. Well, I personally didn't, but whoever was programming the music for the station, we actually made the station go on 24/7. So, of course, when you were there, if nobody was on the air, the station would go silent. But after that, they found a way to automate the station to keep music playing when the DJs were not there. That was a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing because we got to have some activity going on. There wasn't dead air anymore. The station continued going on with music playing, even though there were no DJs on. But the curse part of it was they took the instant replay machines and they created a playlist that would play over and over. The order of music didn't change, so when you heard the playlist, and of course they changed the order, they changed what songs were in that playlist, but by the time it got to my senior year, and I think a little bit beyond, they stuck with the same playlist. And I listened to the station a lot during my off time. Myself, I had a Friday afternoon show from 3 to 3:30. Other than that, I was still listening to the station, and as a result, I heard that playlist going night and day so many times that when I hear a song nowadays from that playlist, my mind always thinks, oh, I'm expecting to hear the next song on the playlist next.
You have it memorized. It's like ingrained now.
Exactly. Nowadays, the station uses much more advanced technology. They have a computer, and the songs are logged and whatnot. I know you're not an only child. You had many siblings, or did you have at least one sibling that was younger than you? Cassandra, yes. I want to say.
Yeah, Cassandra. Yeah, she was a few years younger than me. Yeah.
Did she do the station, or?
She didn't. No, she didn't. And I also have a sister who's younger than her too. Neither of them did the station. I talked it up, but they had different interests. Like Cassandra was, she did a lot of like the school musical and that sort of those sort of activities.
Okay. Last time I saw her, she was a cashier at the Varsity. But that was back in 09, 10. So after I graduated Baker, I did 2 years at OCC, and then I transferred over to SU. And since I was a student at SU, one of my favorite restaurants to visit was the Varsity.
It's a great place.
Yes, it is. And I didn't say anything to her. Every time I went in there, I saw her as a familiar face, but because we didn't really, we were not in school at the same time, or at least she must have been a sophomore when I was a senior or something.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So, and I didn't say anything to her until I think it was 2010 or 2011. But anyway, getting back to you, what lessons did you learn from your time at the station that you feel like you've carried through to where you are now?
Being able to go with things on the fly, to improvise a little bit. I remember specifically one time where I had arranged for a guest to be on my show, and they didn't show up, which no big deal. They forgot, but I had to quickly regroup and figure out how I was going to fill the time in my show. And that sort of ability and that skill helped me, because after I graduated from Baker, I went to school for communications and journalism with a focus in broadcasting, and went into TV news producing. And that's being able to switch gears, respond to breaking news. That's a huge part of the job. So little things that happened, at Baker, I think really led the way to my broadcasting career.
Yep. So you're in it now? You're still in that field?
No, I left to be a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids now, so after my first, I left to focus on that.
How long ago was that?
5 years ago.
Oh, okay. I see. That would be 2019. Interesting how you mentioned guests that didn't show up. I was a little bit devastated. I took it way too personally when I planned a guest to be on. And keep in mind that I went on to have people, not just students, but people from within the community.
Oh, wow.
Outside the Baldwinsville community. I got 2 public service broadcasting awards for that. And
Excellent.
The station was able to keep its license. But I was a little bit more devastated. I probably took it way too personally than you, because I planned for the guests to come up, and when they didn't show up, I kicked myself in the foot, because I was so... There was an example of when I tried to get the past... Excuse me. Let me get my words out. One example that I always can go back to is... This was senior year after the High School Musical, and I was planning on getting some cast members from the High School Musical to show up, because this was senior year. During my last 2 years, we were able to get at least one cast member from the High School Musical to show up, so I figured let's continue on with the tradition. The sad part was that I planned for it, but unfortunately... it didn't work out the third time. Nobody from the High School Musical showed up during senior year, and I took it personal. I tried to do it not just once but twice, and
yeah, well, it's tough, and that I remember too, like just putting a lot of pressure on myself, especially the first few times that I was on air. That I guess I had it in my mind that I was like, okay, I'm going to be like a professional sounding DJ, and, got into the studio and was like, oh my gosh, the kind of weight of everything kind of is there. And, I wish I recorded some of those early episodes, because I probably sounded really nervous, really like, it's a lot. It's fun, but it's a lot to do.
It is, yes, because I always tried to record every show, because at the time I wanted to hear myself live over the air, and I wanted to keep everything that I've done. So, and we used cassette tapes.
Yes.
What you'd have to do is you had to bring in a blank cassette tape, and you would just hit record before you went on air. And now everything's digitized.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's go back quickly into your post-graduation. So
yeah,
you mentioned being in the TV news.
Yeah. I went to St. John Fisher College. Like I had mentioned, I got a degree in communications and journalism, and I worked at the campus TV station all 4 years. And afterwards, I got a job as an associate producer at the NBC affiliate in Rochester, News 10.
Oh, yes. WHEC, yes.
Yeah, yes. Started on the early morning shift, so I had to be at work at 3 a.m. That was delightful, but my first job out of college. It's exciting. That's when I started drinking coffee. And kind of throughout my years at Channel 10, I kind of got a chance to produce all different shows. I ended up becoming a full-time show producer after about 9 months as an associate producer. Started on the weekend shows producing. Then after that was moved on to the morning show, and did that for pretty much the rest of my time at Channel 10. So
we were on the air were you on the air in the morning, or did you do it behind the scenes?
It was all behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
I would go in, decide what stories were going to be covered, did a lot of writing scripts for the anchors to read. And then during the actual broadcast, I would sit in sub control and make sure everyone stayed on time and for where they needed to be.
It's interesting. So this is the first WBXO. You're the first WBXO alum, or maybe the second, that's gone into a career in TV news, or at least on the TV side. So,
nice.
So I gotta ask, because you covered Rochester. What do you know about the mall in Irondequoit?
I knew it was a popular mall that over time kind of developed a negative reputation, and kind of slowly died. But
it's come back to life in
some
capacity. There's still part of the mall that's underdeveloped.
It's taken on a whole new life that's being used for a community center. There's some businesses that are in there, a call center. So it's kind of morphed into a multi-use building. It still very much looks like a mall on the outside, which is interesting. But they've repurposed it, which is nice to see.
There's still part of the mall that is vacant, and it's
okay.
But I used to grow up in Irondequoit. So before moving to Baldwinsville, my first 4.5 years, my family lived in East Irondequoit, just on the other side of that mall. And my younger sister lives in the city of Rochester now.
Okay.
So we still have ties to that area. And if you haven't already, I should let you check out this radio station, 103.9 WDKX, if you haven't heard it already.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yep.
They do a great job. Do you know what the call letters actually stand for? Did anybody tell you what the call letters actually stood for?
I learned that in one of my broadcast history classes. Douglas, King, Malcolm X.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's my favorite radio station to listen to whenever I'm out in the area. Not only to just we're actually going out there tomorrow. Disclaimer, this was recorded on April 7th, the night before the big eclipse. So we're actually headed out there as a family. Everybody else has already gone ahead tonight, and I've decided to stay behind to do this with you and other stuff. I'll be headed out there tomorrow. And of course, I work as an independent IT contractor, so I do a lot of gig type of jobs. So occasionally I've been sent to the Rochester area for work, and not just Rochester, but all over the state. I literally travel all over the state to do my jobs, wherever they need me. I brand myself as the New York State Road Warrior.
Nice.
So, and speaking of which, even though you've been out of the broadcasting medium for the past 5 years, where have you seen it evolve over time?
Definitely the use of social media. When I first started in broadcasting out of college, the station had a Facebook page and Twitter that was only used. It was used. Trying to think of how best to say it. A lot of it was just copying and pasting links from the website. There wasn't the interaction that we associate now with social media. It was just another way to push the web stories. And I mean, that's obviously morphed completely. I mean, even me personally, I get most of my news on social media. I see the links, I have the apps. And then also how video is how we receive video, how we take video, broadcast video, everything from live broadcast. When I first started, we had a microwave truck, and that's how we got our reporters live. And we had to make sure we had a big map in the newsroom where you see the points where we were in range to go live. And sometimes you'd even have to check with an engineer to make sure that was okay. But now, basically reporters can go live anywhere as long as they have, their their phones. And likewise, if there's a breaking news event and we need to be live, reporters can just be on their phones and do like a live stream right then and there. There's no need to do all this massive prep work that was needed originally. So, and I think that's been that's obviously beneficial in ways, but I think it's also another challenge where everything is to be like, it's go, go, go. Let's get on air, get everything on instantly, which has its ups and downs. So
I'd say for sure.
Yeah.
Especially in the field of radio. We talk about music streaming with iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, what have you. That didn't exist, or that was in its infancy when we were in high school. And it's interesting how things have now. We're in an on-demand world.
Absolutely,
It didn't used to be that way. If you wanted to listen to a song, you'd have to either get the CD, or tune it to a radio station. If you wanted to watch your favorite show, you'd have to wait until it came on the air on the channel. There was no on-demand back then. There was, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now with the streaming services that you see nowadays with Netflix and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and Hulu and all of that. What is your take on today's culture now being an on-demand world?
That's a good question. The first thing that comes to mind is with everything being on demand, whether that's like shows or music, it seems like first of all, there's less time to just enjoy the medium, and also I feel like a lot of times, before all the streaming and on demand and social media, sometimes you might come across a show or music or something maybe you wouldn't have chosen, or maybe you wouldn't have gone to, and you're like, oh, hey, I like this. I want more of it. I want to learn more. So I guess maybe less of that sort of organic or incidental like discovery of a show or music or something like that.
Well, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, so we look at it now. So what you're saying, I'm sorry, let me go back. You were saying when there wasn't such an on-demand, you wouldn't, there was more opportunity to discover a show that you didn't really know of at first.
Yeah. I mean, you have, obviously with streaming, you have like recommendations and, and like before you have, your friends will say, oh, you got to watch this series, you got to listen to this. But, if I was listening to the radio back in high school and, obviously I want to hear my songs that I like, but in between there's going to be other things and maybe I'll come across an artist. I'm like, hey, that's great. I've never heard this. I like it.
I see what you're going with that because now with the streaming, it's what you want all the time.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to look at it because now with the on-demand and streaming world, you're more in control than ever. And you get to see, you get to watch, you get to listen to whatever you want all the time. And there is, I mean, there are, on YouTube recommendations or things like that. But now you're in control. And I can see why there's less of that now because you just get to listen to, you have more control. You get to listen to what you want all the time. And there's no ways or there's no organic methods to discover similar or related stuff.
Yeah, or something outside maybe of what you would normally listen to because everything's so it becomes curated to what you have previously watched or listened to. Yeah. And then the other thing that I kind of joke about it with my oldest, who's 5, but I say, hey, back in my day, you couldn't just like pick whatever you wanted to listen to. You had to wait, you had to wait on the radio. You had to wait through commercials, you had to wait till if you called to request it, you had to wait. So that's just me sounding really old.
I know, I'm almost in the same boat. It's unbelievable to think about where we were as kids back in the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And now I don't have kids, I know you do, trying to introduce or trying to share your experiences with this new generation.
Yeah.
If you could please share your perception on now what it's like to try to balance, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this, but going back to raising children of your own, taking what you've learned or your experiences, and how what's changed, or what do you think has changed since then, and how's the approach similar or different? What I'm trying to say is the values or the culture that we had as kids versus today's kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's definitely challenging with such different technology than when we were kids, and we just the main thing right now, especially with kids being so young, is making sure that they're not over consuming any sort of whether it's online or TV or movies or anything like that. And we try to have family movie nights where we all kind of, it's a family sort of participation. It's not just aimlessly sitting in front of a TV or a screen of any kind. But yeah, I think that's going to get a lot more complicated as they get older.
Yes.
It's that's definitely something that it's a little intimidating. It's a little scary.
You signed off. I don't know what happened. Nothing I did. But just to finish your thought.
Yeah, and it's just I want them to grow up to have to be responsible, both in person and on online, in whatever form that's going to be in several years. But I'm still trying to figure that one out.
We didn't have all this on-demand tech either.
Yeah.
Remember dial-up? You couldn't get on you couldn't get online unless the phones were the phone line was free.
Yes. Yep. I remember that. And recently, my 5-year-old also asked what kind of a cell phone I had as a kid, and I was like, I didn't have one as a kid. I didn't have a cell phone until I was in high school, and even then, it just made calls and text messages.
Exactly. Yes.
It didn't.
The flip phones and
whatnot.
It's just amazing. And I'm in IT, as I mentioned, so it's interesting. I've seen it change. I've seen the changes firsthand. I know, and so I'm going to say that radio technology has changed. Speaking of which, I have my own station. I don't know if I actually have I hand-coded my own web-based radio station where I do a show on Friday nights now. Sometimes it's Saturday nights. And I'll share with you the link if you want to tune in. But,
okay. Thank you.
It's quite interesting. But that just shows what you can do now. As you mentioned earlier in the episode, the need to have a degree in broadcasting, that's still important. But even anybody, ordinary citizens these days, they can just take their phone, they can go live on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or X or Instagram, just go TikTok, and they can be their own. They can be their own star.
Yeah.
So that I find is the most. I want to say, what's the best way? That's the most innovative thing that's come out of today's generation, and I like it because if I wanted to be on the air or if I wanted to do a show not too long ago, I'd have to go on an actual station, and after doing WBXL, taking 2 years off at OCC, I went on to SU, and I did WJPZ, aka Z89, and I loved that experience. But then when that was over, I felt like I missed this so much, and I just wanted some way for me to keep doing this, because I still have the broadcasting bug in me. But I knew that trying to get a job in the actual field, that had some roadblocks. And I didn't get a degree in radio or communications. And I know it's a very competitive market. And so I'm glad that we have these tools now where you don't have to necessarily have a degree. You don't have to be a member of the you don't have to work for a big station. You can actually launch your own podcast.
Yeah.
Or you can do what I did, which was code my own station. And I still host shows off of that. And then we can go on live nowadays with all these different social media tools. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been great to have, like you said, the opportunity to all different, it broadens the voices that can, to share what they, want to share, to be on air, to talk about the issues they want to talk about. So yeah, I think it's a great thing in that sense that all the various streaming has opened up a lot of doors for people. That's great.
Yeah, another thing on social media, we didn't have influencers growing up. There were no such thing. There were no such thing as TikTok. There were no such thing as TikTok creators or YouTube influencers when we were growing up, and now today's teens and young adults, that's their lifestyle, that's their culture today. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's a whole different world.
It is, and it could be good, could be bad.
Yeah,
we've seen both. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad.
Yeah,
and you just need to strike a balance, because there's, in my opinion, I think you can get to the point where you have too much screen time, and then that takes away your interaction with the real world. And what are we going to learn from that? I think what we're going to learn from that is we don't want technology to consume us. In speaking of AI, I mean, now we're living in the world of AI. Artificial intelligence is starting to emerge, and there has to be a way to balance between using AI or whatever comes next, with still holding the same human values that we've had for generations.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it comes down to media literacy. And, that was something that, part of the classes I took in college, but I think it's valuable to anyone to know what they're consuming and, if there's agendas or biases, or even, with AI, if it's human made or AI, there's a lot of questions. And I think it's just, a matter of educating ourselves as to what's out there. And that's tough too. That's challenging.
It is. And good thing we have experts, because we don't know everything, but there are some smart people out there who do. And that's why we need news, going back to news reporters. That's why we need trusted journal, or let me go back. That's why we need journalists out there to really bring them in and let them tell their story in a way that's simple enough for us as consumers to understand.
Yeah. I agree. And having worked in TV news, the media, the broad media, I know sometimes gets a bad rep sometimes, but the local journalists I've worked with have been amazing, and they do put in so much effort to bring people, the stories that affect their community, and to get the information out there and uncover things that need to be uncovered. So,
yes. Yeah. Where do you think, speaking of local versus syndicated, have you seen the shift in both radio and TV, where things are starting to become more conglomerated, and local independent stations are now becoming part of these corporate chains and whatnot? I still feel like it's important to have local people. So here in Syracuse, for example, I don't know if you know this, or two of our stations, the NBC, the CBS, and the CW stations are all under one company now.
Okay.
And Channel 9 still, but Channel 9 still its own thing, but it's now under a different parent company, and we see a lot of instances where, also in radio, most of the local morning hosts, for example, or some of the local DJs are now being replaced by nationally syndicated shows. I think it's still important to have the local connection, the voices of your local community on your local station, whether it's radio or TV. And I hate to see that go away. I hate to see the day where 24/7 you turn on a station and it's from a nationally syndicated show out in who knows where, or you turn on the TV and the anchors and the reporters are from somewhere else in the country. They didn't grow up here. They didn't live here. I'd hate to see it where that local aspect is just taken away from us.
Yeah. I've definitely noticed it with radio, and even on the TV side, I've worked for two different TV stations in Rochester. I worked for Channel 10, and then I also worked for Channel 8 as an executive producer there before I had kids. And despite kind of the larger corporations, because Channel 8 is owned by Nexstar. Channel 10 is owned by Hubbard, which is a smaller company, but they still really emphasize keeping local people here. So, my time there, there was still a lot of emphasis on we're a local news station. We're going to cover local issues. Even in newscasts, we were, discouraged is kind of a strong word, but, encouraged to put as much local content in there as possible to, keep the national sort of news packages to a minimum.
Which is good.
Yeah, so that's promising, but again, that was that was 5 years ago. So I know things change over time, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's important to keep the local. It's important to keep the local personalities on air.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're about to wrap it up here, but do you have any funny stories? Going back to your WBXL, do you have any funny stories?
Yes, I do. So on one particular evening, I played the cha-cha slide for a song, and afterwards I started talking about, in the song they say do the Charlie Brown. I'm like, could someone explain to me what that is? Like I don't know what it is, and I went on with the some more songs, and somebody called, and I was shocked. Somebody called and explained to me in detail how to Charlie Brown. So thanks to that person, whoever you are. And now whenever I go to like a wedding or, anywhere where the cha-cha slide comes off company party, I know I'm doing a Charlie Brown.
Oh, it's interesting. Can you share with the rest of us what that is?
Yeah, basically you just kind of, put one leg out in front of the other, and you kind of just like rock back and forth. It kind of mimics how like the characters walk on the cartoon.
I didn't know that. Thank you for teaching me that. Yeah. I had no idea. Final thoughts before we end this.
No, I'm thank you for having me on the show and being able to walk down memory lane. I'm glad WBXL is still on the air, and yeah.
It taught us a lot, and I'm grateful for the experience.
Absolutely.
What I like to do to end the episode for anybody is I have them go back into the radio theater of the mind. Imagine yourself signing off your show, and give us your sign-off phrase.
All right. Give me a second here. All right. Thank you for listening. This is Susie Q signing off from WBXL. Have a great night.
Thanks again for listening to The Buzz Goes Gold, a podcast celebrating 50 years of broadcasting excellence on WBXL 90.5 FM. This podcast is produced exclusively by the alumni of WBXL, with hosting duties by yours truly, Jordan Hayes, class of 07, and the intro voice by Rick DiUlio. Many special thanks go out to WJPZ alumnus John Jag Gay, class of 2002, for the inspiration behind this podcast and his helpful tips and advice for making it go.